Welcome to The Rising, the official podcast of the District Grand Lodge of Madras. After an inspiring first season that explored the timeless principles, traditions, and transformative journey of Freemasonry, we are delighted to welcome you to Season 2. We begin this new chapter with a conversation that is both insightful and inspiring. Our guest today is a distinguished leader whose vision is shaping the future of Freemasonry across our district, Right Worshipful Brother Matthew Joseph, the Right Worshipful District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of Madras. Under his leadership, the district has embraced a renewed focus on learning, leadership, fellowship, charitable service, and a meaningful engagement, while remaining firmly rooted in the ancient landmarks and enduring values of the craft. In this inaugural episode of Season 2, we explore his journey into Freemasonry, the principles that guide his leadership, his vision for the district, and the opportunities that lie ahead for every brother, from the newest entered apprentice to the most experienced past master. Whether you're listening from your home, your lodge room, or on the move, thank you for joining us. This is The Rising, where tradition meets tomorrow and every conversation inspires us to build ourselves, strengthen our lodge, and serve humanity with purpose.
Right Worshipful, the District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of Madras, Right Worshipful Brother Matthew Joseph, it is a pleasure to have you with us here today. Thank you for taking your time out and joining us.
It's always a pleasure to interact with other brethren and get an insight into what others think and how it could or may change my perceptions.
You know, I see you as a modern person with a modern perspective and views which connects to today's society and add values. But Freemasonry is an organization that has been there for centuries, and most of it has been shrouded in mysteries and secrets. I'm sure it has evolved over centuries, as all organizations must. And yourself being someone who is modern, well traveled, educated, and also engaging with different demographies, how do you see its role and relevance in today's rapidly changing societal landscape, especially within India, as the District Grand Lodge of Madras plays a big role here?
Yeah, I think the first thing to realize is that we have evolved and yet we have not evolved. Some of our teachings are ancient, and the methodology. So it sometimes surprises me that our ancient brethren who first devised this whole system were far ahead of their times, because some of the methodology they used in those days is still relevant today. And we find a lot of consultants and human resources, event managers using those techniques. It actually struck me that one of the first things that they do in a business school is they say that we don't use a theory part of it. We don't start with theory, we start with a case study. I think Freemasonry has perfected that many centuries ago, where they use allegories and symbols. So the allegories and symbols, though sometimes misunderstood, also gets reinterpreted as we evolve. In fact, we say Masonry is a peculiar system of allegory. Now, today, if you tell somebody he's peculiar, you think he's odd, or he would take it as an insult to say that he's odd. But peculiar actually means distinctive in the way that it was first written. So these are some of the changes. So that is why I always tell brethren that Freemasonry has evolved and still not evolved. It's a kind of a funny or a strategic statement, because a lot of things have been with us for centuries. At the same time, you can interpret it with the way the world is evolving around us. I know I'm getting the point across, but we change, but we don't change. It is something like that.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. However, Freemasonry has evolved in Europe, especially from UK. And I mean, perhaps much before UK itself was formed as such, but from those regions in general. And India, as diverse as it is, from north to south and east to west. Freemasonry is spread across the globe. So when you're saying that it has evolved, isn't this evolution different for different demographies? Isn't this different for different corners of India itself? And even when you come to the district of Madras, which covers South India, how can you correlate to the different states in South India, which is drastically different from their brothers in Europe and their visions and their requirements as a society?
I think that is what makes Freemasonry peculiar. What Freemasonry is trying to teach is what is in every person's DNA. You know, you want to be better every day. You are good at something, you want to be better. You are maybe a good sportsman, you want to be a better sportsman. So the great object of Freemasonry is to make that which is good better and that which is better the best. So that is relevant yesterday, today, tomorrow, and across any demography, whether it's Europe or India or any part of North, South, East, West. Every human being wants to be a better version of himself. So there's a constant search. People go to various spiritual organizations, they go to various training programs, they go to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, all because they want to be a better version of themselves. So the changing landscape or the evolving society does not change that. That is the basic instinct of human being. And Freemasonry, unlike most organizations, is not, or most religious or spiritual organizations, is not bogged down by dogma or theology. It offers, like I said, it offers no sacraments, but teaches every man must have his own religion. That is the only requirement, that you must have your own religion. And as a result, men of all faiths are meeting together with one purpose: to find ways to make themselves better. There is no question of conversion. We are not trying to make somebody else who joins Freemasonry a better person. In fact, we are advised in Freemasonry that if you see somebody with a defect, you first correct yourself. You know, it's not your business to be trying to correct others. And that is how you make yourself a better person.
Make someone a better person. Yes, indeed. From what you said, let me be a little bold and ask you straight. How has this made you a better person? How has Freemasonry influenced your personal and professional growth?
See, I think a lot of it was intangible to start with. But once you get involved in Freemasonry, in terms of understanding the way, what we call the rituals or the ceremonies, and trying to figure out what it means, it then starts playing on your own thought process. It starts playing on the way you behave with society. It starts making a difference in the way you lead your own organization, because a lot of the teaching is ingrained into the allegories and symbols. That's what we always say. Masonry, a peculiar system of which is veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. The allegories and symbols make the intangible portion more tangible. And that is what helped me also, going back from 25 years to now. I don't think I would have been the person I am today, if I did not unconsciously ingrain some of the principles into my own psyche, into my own thought process. So that is the beauty of Freemasonry. Unlike any other social organization today, which talks of one aspect of life, Masonry gives you a rounded version of life, and it doesn't thrust it upon you. It slowly grows into you.
As you said, Freemasonry makes a good man better and a better man the best. And I see you here as the best, if not somewhere as close to that, for you have been recently installed as a district Grand Master.
Thank you. Yes.
And you're welcome, of course. I think you have earned it. And that is why you're sitting where you are sitting. But after having sat in this office, did you find the need to change any priorities with this background setting of changing and evolving societies, with the differences of India as a country, with South India having its own challenges? Did you think that you need to strategize? Do you feel the need for changing anything? Did you have to create new visions? Did you feel the need to strengthen the fraternity in this region, for example?
The biggest challenge for us as a district, because of the constraints that we have in terms of opening new lodges and expanding Freemasonry, is that we have larger numbers trying to joining Freemasonry under the United Grand Lodge, or as we call it, the English Constitution, and the fear that this would make them, the engagement with this larger number is going to be more and more difficult. That we see it in any organization, right? From a classroom, if there are 20 students to a teacher and or 60 students to a teacher, the kind of difference it makes. So therefore, the challenge before me today is how to engage brethren from the top, the senior most to the junior most. We have members ranging from 80 plus to Louis who are on 2021. So, and in the process, we need to make the district more vibrant, more visible, and you have the membership, you automatically are stronger from that. But we do not want members who are members just paying the subscription. We want members who are engaging with the organization. And therefore, the vibrancy comes in. And then with the new philosophy of United Grand Lodge of England, where we need to be more visible to society, which brings in a new challenge. We're changing the way we thought for so many years to the new process of trying to be more visible to society. So what can we do? What can't we do? And that is the challenge before our district. We have numbers. We have the membership growing. Do we have sufficient engagement that the newer members feel that they are part of something? Or do they just feel that they've signed up in an organization and they find that they're wasting their time? I think that is the challenge before the District Grand Lodge of Madras, and personally, what I am trying to look at. So, in fact, at one of the leadership programs, we coined this word, aspire to inspire. So each person aspires to inspire one of the brethren to get more engaged with Freemasonry.
Louis, as I understand, is the son of a Mason, and
Yes.
he therefore quite naturally will have some insight into what the organization is all about, compared to his counterparts who are joining in from the general public, and Freemasonry is something very new for them. And Freemasonry, being known for its emphasis on moral and ethical development, you also mentioned about the numbers, including Louis as well as fresh members. When you have such huge volume of numbers, this distinction between Louis and the other members, does it not dilute or create a problem with the standard enforced in Freemasonry? Because, as I said earlier, Freemasonry is known for its emphasis on moral and ethical development. In which way or how does the fraternity encourage its members to embrace and embody ethical leadership in both their personal and public lives here?
Yeah, see, I think just getting back to your first question about the Louis, Louis is basically the son of a Mason. So, and therefore, normally you cannot join Freemasonry unless you're 21 years and more. So the Louis can join from the age of 18. The advantage he has is that his father already is a Mason, and therefore he must have inculcated, or some of the Masonic values would have rubbed off on him. And that gives him an advantage in some ways. To somebody who joins at 21 fresh, he has no idea what the organization is all about. In the changing scenario, we now have a third group of members who join out of curiosity. So they go onto the website or they read Dan Brown's book and they hear all about Masonry. And then they want to find out what it is all about. And they finally land up on the website of the United Grand Lodge or the District Grand Lodge of Madras or one of the other districts. And we call these online inquiries. Initially, there was a lot of resistance to online inquiries. But then, since I was involved in the membership screening committee for online, we found that, okay, maybe there are 100 inquiries, but out of the 100, we get 5 or 6 who have done a considerable amount of research on Freemasonry. They know quite a bit more than Louis or a person who was just introduced into Freemasonry by a friend of his knows. And because they have read it and they're convinced about the philosophy and and what Masonry is all about, they also make very good Masons. So now we have a third category compared to this two. So Masonry encourages ethical leadership through a combination, of ritual, symbolism, mentorship, and lived examples. The entire structure is designed to nurture men, nurture them from being good to even better. But one thing we should not forget in the process is that you have to be a good man first to become a Freemason. So we are not saying that Masonry will take a criminal and make him a good or the better or the best. We are not an organization that brings salvation to somebody or converts somebody or transforms somebody's life. Essence of Freemasonry, and that is why entry into Freemasonry is quite restricted and for a long time conservative, is because we first want good men and we make then good men better. And then the better. And once they get better, we help them to become the best. But at the end of it, a good man knows what he is looking for. And therefore, he builds the structure, like we say, he builds his own superstructure. So I don't perceive any advantage or disadvantage the point at which people enter, because if your basis is good, if the reason you're joining Freemasonry is good, then you would definitely aspire to become better. And in the process, somebody else sees that and he also aspires to be there. And I think that's the sum of it.
You mentioned that Freemasonry is restrictive, it is conservative, and there's a general perception that it is shrouded in a lot of mystery. Doesn't the presence online and all these websites, and where this third category that you mentioned, who does their due diligence online and comes across these websites, doesn't that become somehow counterproductive to this entire restrictiveness and secrecy and mysteries, this image that is projected of being shrouded in mystery, etc.?
Yes and no. The earlier concepts that Masonry had, if you want to call it a concept of being very secretive and being conservative, has stood it in good stead. That's why it's more than 300 years old. Today, we say that we are not a secret organization, but we are like any other organization, an organization with our own secrets. After all, in the business world, you have patents, and some companies, they don't allow you to take your mobile phone into the company. Why? Because they have secrets. So does it make it, conspiratorial? Does it make it something that you should be worried about? That is part of the way we organizations work. So the Freemasonry today is still conservative, I would say. It's not a secret organization. In fact, somebody said, how can it be secret when we have the biggest building in Covent Garden as the headquarters? So everybody knows it's the Freemasons Hall on Queen Street. How secretive can it be? There are people coming in and out. There is no magical door that you walk through and you disappear. The public are allowed inside for a tour of the building. That has changed from that point of view. At the same time, what we do within the confines of our temple, as we would like to call it, I mean, it's not a temple in the sense that we know it today. It is a room where we meet and exchange ideas, exchange thoughts, exchange processes of improving your own life. Then there is that part remains there. So that's still the conservative part. The other conservative part is, at least under the English Constitution, you are supposed to dress formally. If you go to America, it's different. People come to Masonic meetings in jeans and a top hat, or jeans and a cowboy hat and stuff like that. But under the English Constitution, we are still very formal. We still dress in black and white, and are still called penguins when they wear the long coats and stuff like that. So yes, so there is a conservative part. But what I have noticed even among the younger people who are joining, some of them are quite intrigued by the conservative part. They like the dress up. They say that teaches you discipline. I know people who never possessed a suit before. And after joining Freemasonry, you have to buy a suit. You have to buy a black suit. You have to have white shirts. And they feel it's a change once in a way to get down to being more disciplined or more organized when you go for a meeting. I don't think you can straight away write off the conservative part and say that it is no more relevant to the younger people. And because they also see through what the purpose of doing all this is.
You mentioned about this black and white suit that you wear. In today's world, how relevant is that? We have seen in societies today this entire um, discussions about attire, especially what is deemed as formal attire, what is deemed as casual attire. This basically comes to a clash when it comes to traditional formal attire and Western formal attire. And how do you see that playing a role in today's world, especially since there is a lot of spiritualism, nationalism that is embodied in most of the people, especially the youngsters who are coming in? Do you see a conflict there?
Not really, because if you look at large Japanese companies like Suzuki and Toyotas in Japan, many years ago, they adopted the concept of everybody wearing a uniform. You know? And if you go to any of the Japanese companies, even in India, you wouldn't make out the difference between the managing director or CEO and the operator of the shop floor. They all wear exactly the same thing. And that happens even today. I know some schools that try to do away with the uniform. You know, they said, no, uniform, let children wear whatever they want. But then the indiscipline that set in was so high because it showed disparity. You know, because some children are little better, well-off parents, their dresses are more expensive. Others can't afford that kind of dressing. In the classroom, then there is a difference of opinion, there is a difference of perception, and it creates classes. Now, whether you are the managing director or of a billion-dollar company, or you are the janitor, you are all dressed the same. That levels the whole place right from the way you dress. The differences that you have or that you see, that you perceive, is no more visible. And you are able to relate to the other person. You really are not the kind of racist, as you may call it, if you look at. But somewhere in your subconscious, if you see a person very poorly dressed, you tend to behave with him a different way. But in Masonry, when we say everybody's on the level, and today your boss could be your inner guard, while when you are the boss of your lodge, then but everybody is dressed the same. Nobody's even going to know the difference. And I think the black and white attire that we have, or that is mandatory for meetings, is a good thing. And I think it only helps us with our one of the basic philosophies that we have, that everybody's on the level.
You mentioned just now, or you used the word lodge. What is its significance in Freemasonry?
The lodge actually comes from what was used by the ancient masons. So when the masons were involved in the construction of a building, they needed a shelter, where they could sit down, where they could have a meal, where they could discuss what was the work to be done. So along the side of the building, they used to build a kind of a temporary kind of construction. Now, this construction was adjacent to the building, and it used to be called a lodgement, if I'm not mistaken. And slowly, as the guilds formed, as they started forming organizations, there were so many of these lodgements. So they started saying, okay, this is lodge next to this building, this is the lodge next to that building. And therefore, the names of these side temporary units started forming, and they started having numbers. And each of them had a master mason, who was the head of that particular group of people. And since Freemasonry takes most of the allegories and symbols from the stonemasons, the same word started being used even at the lodges once they formalized. We take a lot of our allegories and symbols from stonemasons. The word lodge also came into Freemasonry from the same background of where the whole Freemasonry was set up.
Earlier on in the conversation, you categorically mentioned who a Freemason is. I would now like to put forth a question to you, which I'm sure the rest of the world is also interested to know. What do Freemasons do?
Yes, I think that's a good question, but a very long answer. So bear with me. Freemasonry, you join a Freemason, you become a Freemason because you want to make a good man better. That's the basis. So what is Freemasonry then becomes the question. So we say that it's a peculiar system veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Now, peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. So there we are talking of a very distinctive organization which teaches you morals. And how does it teach you morals? By using allegories and symbols. Now, where do the allegories and symbols come? They come from, or how are they taught to you? They taught to you, like I mentioned earlier, instead of case studies that we have in business schools, they're taught to you by using various jewels or using various instruments that we have within the lodge that we were talking about. For example, we have something called the working tools. Now, the working tools, there are, depending on the degree, there are different kinds of working tools. And one of the working tools, which I think will be very relevant, is the 24-inch gauge. So now what is a 24-inch gauge? It's simply a ruler, or anybody who wants to measure something would use a 24-inch gauge, or maybe a 12-inch gauge. The 24-inch gauge has a symbolic meaning. 24-inch gauge is then related to the 24 hours of the day. So what do you do in 24 hours of the day? Part spent in prayer. So that is the spiritual part of it. Part spent in labor. That is your livelihood. And part spent for a brother in need. So that is the basis of Freemasonry. Your whole life is just put in just into one instrument. Which normally you would just look at and say, okay, that's a 24-inch gauge. So similarly, there are a lot of symbols and jewels, as we call them, in the lodge, which we say it is for us to look and moralize on. We have a stone. If you walk into a lodge, you will see a rough stone, in the form of a cube, and then next to that you will see a stone which is half polished. So there is a moral beyond that, just beyond looking at the stone. So that is why we say in Masonry, you have to look beyond the object that you see. The meaning is much, much deeper. In fact, I think there's a very famous author, his name was Albert Pike, said, the symbols of the wise are the idols of the ignorant. I thought it was a very profound statement, that the symbols of the wise are idols of the ignorant. So a ignorant person would just look at an object in the lodge and say, "Oh, yeah, that's it." But a wise person will then moralize on it. What is it all about? Why is it sitting there? The meaning of the symbol is much higher than the symbol itself, and that is the difference between seeing and understanding. And which makes Freemasonry different from any other organization. And what truly inspires anybody to a lifelong association with this craft, as we call it, or with this association. And I think this is something that keeps coming back to me, that the symbol has much more to say than it being just an object.
You mentioned the 24 in gauge, and and you compare it to the 24 hours of the day, which I find very fascinating. And therein you divided that into three parts: one part for spiritualism, the other part for labor or livelihood, and the third part in helping a brother in need. Are you referring to charity? And who is a brother when you're referring to a brother in need?
Yes, the third part refers to charity, and a brother in need is your neighbor. That is what we are taught in Freemasonry. You have a duty to your God, you have a duty to your neighbor, and a duty to yourself. So A brother in need, in the very short sense, can mean another brother, another fellow Mason, but it also means in the larger picture, it means your neighbor. So if there is a neighbor who you think needs your assistance and you can be of assistance without being detrimental to yourself, then it is your duty to go out there. In fact, if you look at the kind of charity that Freemasonry does, it's really across the world. It's not just in India or just in South India. There's so much of work that is done by Freemasons, which is never advertised. And that is one of the beauties of Freemasonry. We always say that don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. So it's your praise doesn't come from society. Your praise or job well done comes from great architect. He is seeing everything, so he knows what you have done and what you have not done. And in one of the in one of the verses in the Bible, it says that if you have already received your reward on earth, don't expect it in heaven. So you rather forget about your reward on earth, and then you have your reward in heaven.
You said Freemasonry does a lot of charity work globally. Mm-hmm. Can you highlight or mention some of such philanthropic initiatives, especially by the District Grand Lodge of Madras in peculiar?
I think the first and foremost charity project that we have at the District Grand Lodge of Madras, to be specific, and it is true of Freemasons across the world, is we say charity begins at home. We were referring to the brother earlier. The brother in the very small sense means your own fellow member of a fellow Freemason. And we are maybe the only social organization that takes care of the brother at the time of distress. Say he's gone into financial calamity and he cannot even, afford to have a roof over his head. So Masonry has a pension system where we assist the brother. Then we also have the pension for the widow. Suppose the brother has suddenly passed on and the widow is now struggling to come to terms with first the grief of her spouse not being there, and second is the worry about how she is going to go on with life. And so we have a pension for widows as well. So we look after the family even post the time when the brother is no more with us. And this is, I think, the first project that is quite universal across Freemasonry under the English Constitution. The second project that we have is to, as you know, education means everything, And for us, educating the girl child is a very big project for the District Grand Lodge of Madras. Okay, this is specific to District Grand Lodge of Madras. So we have over 120 beneficiaries of girl students who benefit from this. We give scholarships for children from the 9th grade and handhold them right through till they pass out of college and do even a postgraduate education. And a considerable amount of money is invested in this project. The third project, which is quite unique, and I'm not sure whether it is done anywhere in the world by any other Freemason lodge, is what we call the Pattam project. Pattam, as you know, in Tamil is kite. So if you see a kite, it is free it flies, it moves whichever way the direction the wind takes it, but it is attached by a string. So if it goes out of bounds, then the person who's flying it controls the path, the trajectory, or where the kite is going. But otherwise, it has the freedom to do anything you want. So this particular project, we work with the first time, and these are offenders who have done very, very small things, and they are then hauled up by the police. I've seen cases in that jail where, the boy was so hungry that he stole a milk packet from somebody's box, and somebody complained, he was identified and he was picked up and he was put in remand. Now, what used to happen is the remand jail was the same jail as where hardened criminals were also put. And invariably, they see that these boys who are picked up and put in jail develop an association with the hardened criminals. And over a period of time, they also join them. So, and in jail, then they pick up other habits like drug abuse is very high. Many years ago, I think roughly about 10 years ago now, NGO organization, which is headed by a very senior advocate, could convince the judiciary, the police, and the prison departments to set up a separate remand jail for first-time petty offenders. And this proposal came to us, and we got involved in the sense that we said we do not want to get into the legal aspect of it. We don't want to be judgmental. We don't know whether the boy picked up was innocent or guilty. We are not part of that. But what we would like to give him is a hope that once he's out, there is a better future ahead of him. And that is all that we are looking at. So we provided counselors to talk of anger management, other counselors to talk to check the aptitude skill of boys, tell them what they are good at, what they're not good at, training programs for building teams, training programs for various other skills, a computer system for them to learn computers, a small library for them to read books. So this was a very, very interesting project, and the statistics show that the number of returns, that is in the sense that the remand boy has been acquitted, he's out back free. And compared to those who did not go through this project, this counseling project, which is roughly around 3 to 4 weeks, the numbers that were coming back was less than 5% compared to 40 to 50% before this. So less than 5% of the boys have gone back to crime. At one point it had almost become zero, but then we were not sure of the data. The authenticity of the data was in doubt. So we know for sure that less than 5% of the boys, once they were released, went back to crime, which was a very satisfying note for all of us. And then we have various smaller projects are run by various lodges. One of the lodges has a free clinic once a month, where they also provide food for all the patients and the attenders who come for them. This is in Trichy, in Rock. A similar one, I understand, is also started by a lodge in Hyderabad, and one more lodge in Chennai too. Some of these lodges have started that. Ongoing as far as the District Grand Lodge of Madras is concerned.
As we conclude part 1 of this special conversation with Right Worshipful Brother Matthew Joseph, we've journeyed through his remarkable Masonic path, his philosophy of leadership, and the values that continue to shape the District Grand Lodge of Madras. But there is much more to come. In part 2, we delve deeper into his vision for the future of our district, the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, and the importance of mentoring the next generation of Freemasons, and his message to every brother striving to make a meaningful difference in the craft. Until then, take a moment to reflect on the insights shared today and how each of us can contribute to strengthening our lodges, enriching our fraternity, and living the timeless principles of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Thank you for joining us on The Rising. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with your fellow brethren and encourage them to be part of the conversation. Until part 2, keep rising.